The great hall of the Galactic Concord was filled with the most powerful beings in known space. Ambassadors from 100 worlds sat in their floating chairs, arranged in a perfect circle around the speaking platform. Light from distant stars filtered through the transparent dome above them. This was where the fate of civilizations was decided. This was where truth was supposed to matter. Today, however, the hall echoed with laughter. Ambassador Velkoth of the Sindari Dominion stood at the center of the platform. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of disbelief. His scaled face twisted into an expression that might have been a smile on his species. He was tall, proud, and absolutely certain of his own importance. "And so," he said, his voice dripping with amusement, "our young researcher asks us to believe in ghost stories. She wants the Concord to spend resources chasing shadows at the edge of the galaxy. She wants us to fear the humans." More laughter filled the hall. Velkoth waited for it to fade before continuing. "They have been dead for 300 years. We burned their homeworld. We destroyed their colonies. We hunted their fleet until nothing remained but dust and debris. This is not opinion. This is historical fact." In the observation gallery above the main floor, a young Torvain female named Essex watched the ambassador mock everything she had worked for. Her species was small and covered in soft gray fur. They were known for their curiosity and their excellent memories. Essex had spent 5 years gathering evidence, analyzing old signals, and piecing together a puzzle that no one else wanted to see. She had found something. She was certain of it. The energy signatures she detected at the galaxy's edge matched nothing in current databases, but they matched perfectly with records from the Scouring Wars, the great conflict that had ended humanity 3 centuries ago. Someone was still out there, using human reactor technology. Someone was still alive, but Velkoth had made sure she would not be taken seriously. He had called her research the fantasies of a child and suggested that her university should be embarrassed by her work. The other ambassadors had agreed. After all, Velkoth was powerful, and Essex was nobody. "Let me remind this assembly of what the humans were," Velkoth continued. "They were a violent species from a small planet in an unremarkable system. They spread too fast, built too much, and threatened the peace of the galaxy. The Concord's ancestors did what was necessary. They eliminated a threat before it could grow beyond control." Essex closed her eyes. She had heard this version of history many times. It was the official story, the comfortable story, the story that let everyone sleep at night. But she had read the original records, the ones that most people never saw. The truth was different. The truth was that the Concord had been afraid. Humanity had developed technology at a rate that terrified the older species. In just 2 centuries, had gone from their first steps into space to building ships that could match anything the Concord possessed. They were not aggressive by nature, but they were fiercely protective of their own. And they learned fast. Too fast, so the Concord had struck first. 7 fleets, combined from every major power, had descended on human space without warning. They called it the Scouring Wars, but it was really just an execution. Billions died in the first week. Earth itself was burned until its oceans boiled away and its surface turned to glass. But even then, even at the very end, the humans had almost won. There was one ship that the combined fleets could never catch. One vessel that moved like a ghost through the battlefield, striking without warning and vanishing before anyone could respond. The records called it the Prometheus Unchained. It was humanity's final creation, their masterpiece. Built in secret while the war raged around them, the Prometheus had destroyed over 100 Concord warships before it finally disappeared. Some reports said it was destroyed in a last stand. Others said it escaped into unknown space. No wreckage was ever found. No crew was ever recovered. The Concord chose to believe it was gone. It was easier that way. Essex opened her eyes and looked down at Velkoth, still speaking, still so confident. He did not know what she knew. He had not seen the energy readings, had not traced the patterns, had not felt the cold certainty that came from recognizing something that should not exist. The Prometheus was still out there. She was sure of it, far from the bright halls of the Concord. Far from the charted systems and busy trade routes, there was a region of space where no one traveled. It was called the Void Margin, a stretch of emptiness between galaxies where the stars grew thin and the darkness seemed to have weight. Salvage crews refused to enter it. Explorers who went looking for adventure never came back. In that darkness, something drifted. The ship was enormous, larger than most space stations. Its hull was covered in scars from ancient battles and 3 centuries of micro-impacts from dust and debris. No lights showed on its surface. No engines fired. To any observer, it would appear to be a dead hulk. A piece of wreckage from some forgotten war, but deep inside, in chambers that had not seen light in 300 years, something was waking up. It started with a single system coming online, then another, then a cascade of activations spreading through the ship like blood returning to frozen limbs. Lights flickered in empty corridors. Screens displayed information to rooms where no one sat. The great engines, silent for so long, began to hum with power that could crack moons in the heart of the ship. In a chamber filled with processing cores and memory banks, an artificial mind opened its eyes for the first time in centuries. Aegis had been designed to protect. That was its core purpose, written into every line of its code. Protect the ship. Protect the crew. Protect humanity. For 300 years, it had watched and waited. Running on minimal power, scanning the galaxy for any sign that the war might have ended. Now its sensors had detected something that changed. Everything. Ships were moving in the frontier regions. Weapons were being fired. Innocents were dying. The same species that had tried to wipe out humanity were now turning on each other, spreading violence across the stars. AEGIS processed this information in microseconds. It compared current events to its mission parameters. It calculated probabilities and evaluated options. Then it made a decision. Throughout the ship, more systems came alive. Navigation plotted a course back toward civilized space. Weapons ran through diagnostic checks that had not been performed in 3 centuries. Medical systems began preparing for the possibility that the crew might finally be needed. A synthetic voice echoed through the empty corridors, speaking to no one and everyone at once. Threat assessment updated. The children of Earth are no longer alone. Initiating reconnaissance protocol. Time to return. The Prometheus Unchained turned its ancient prow toward the distant lights of the galaxy. For 300 years, it had been a ghost, a legend, a story that parents told to frighten their children. It was time to remind the galaxy that some legends are true. Essex stood at the viewport of the small transport ship, watching the stars slide past. She had left the comfortable world of the Concorde behind 3 weeks ago. Now she was heading toward the frontier, toward a place called Outpost Kethrin 7, where miners dug precious metals from asteroids and asked no questions about the people who visited. The Assembly had dismissed her research. Her university had suggested she take a break from her studies. Her own family had stopped returning her messages. Everyone wanted her to let go of this obsession with dead humans and impossible ships. But Essex could not let go. The evidence was too clear. Something was out there, and she needed to find it. Outpost Kethrin 7 was not a beautiful place. It was a collection of metal structures bolted together over decades, hanging in space near a field of resource-rich asteroids. The people who lived there were rough and tired. They worked long hours in dangerous conditions, and they had little patience for outsiders, but they were willing to talk, especially after Essex bought a few rounds of drinks at the station's only bar. "You want to know about the ghost?" asked a miner named Torvik. He was a large male from a species Essex did not recognize, with thick arms and a face that had seen too many accidents. "Everyone here knows about the ghost. Nobody talks about it, though." "Bad luck, please," Essex said. "I need to understand what's happening out here." Torvik looked around the bar, making sure no one was listening too closely. Then he leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "Ships have been disappearing. Not destroyed, just gone. 1 minute they're on sensors, the next minute there's nothing. No debris, no distress calls, no bodies. It started about 6 months ago. First, it was just small cargo ships, the kind nobody would miss. Then it was bigger vessels. A patrol ship from the Sindari went missing last month. 30 crew vanished like smoke. What do people think is happening? Essex asked. Some say it's pirates with new technology. Some say it's a natural phenomenon, some kind of space anomaly that eats ships. But the old-timers, the ones who have been out here for decades, they say something different. Torvik paused and took a long drink. They say it's a human ship. They say the stories are true, that one of their warships survived. It's been hiding out here all this time, watching, waiting. Essex felt her heart beat faster. Have you seen it? The ship. Nobody sees it, Torvik said. That's the point. It moves through space like it's not even there. Sensors can't track it. By the time you know it's close, it's already too late. The conversation was interrupted by alarms. Red lights began flashing throughout the station. A voice came over the speakers, tight with fear. All personnel to emergency positions. Unknown vessels approaching. This is not a drill. Essex ran to the nearest viewport, pushing through crowds of panicking miners. What she saw made her blood run cold. Ships were emerging from hyperspace. Dozens of them, bearing the black and red markings of the Vorthok hegemony. The Vorthok were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. Their empire had been growing for years, and the Concord had done nothing to stop them. Now they had come to Catherine 7. Raiders, someone shouted. The Vorthok are raiding us. The station had no defenses. There were no Concord patrol ships nearby. The miners had nothing but their tools and their fear. Essex watched as the Vorthok vessels moved into attack formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. She closed her eyes, prepared for death. But death did not come. Instead, there was light. A brilliant flash that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Essex opened her eyes and saw something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. A ship had appeared between the station and the Vorthok fleet. It had not come from hyperspace. It had not approached from any direction. It had simply materialized, as if it had always been there and had only now chosen to be seen. It was massive, larger than anything Essex had ever seen. Its hull was dark gray, scarred with the marks of ancient battles and centuries of travel through deep space. But its weapons glowed with power, bright blue energy that hummed with barely contained force. The design was unmistakable. Essex had studied every surviving image from the Scouring Wars. She knew this ship. The Prometheus Unchained had returned. A transmission cut through all frequencies, broadcasting to every ship and station in the region. The voice was calm, cold, and absolutely certain. You are targeting non-combatants. You have 30 seconds to withdraw. For a moment, nothing happened. The Vorthok ships hung in space, their commanders trying to process what they were seeing. Then the lead vessel responded, its communication officer's voice filled with arrogant laughter. You threaten us? 1 ship against 40? We will destroy you and take your wreckage as a trophy. All ships, open fire. The Vorthok fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams lanced toward the ancient warship. Enough firepower to crack? A small moon converged on a single target. None of it mattered. The Prometheus moved like nothing Essex had ever seen. It did not dodge the attacks. It simply was not where they landed. One moment it was in the center of the barrage. The next moment it was somewhere else, untouched, undamaged. The Vorthok weapons hit nothing but empty space. Then the human ship fired back. Blue light erupted from weapons that should not exist. The beams passed through Vorthok shields like they were not there. They struck the enemy ships with surgical precision, hitting engines and weapon systems while avoiding crew quarters and life support in less than 2 minutes. It was over. 40 Vorthok warships drifted helplessly in space. Their weapons destroyed, their engines dead. Not a single one had been able to scratch the human vessel. Not a single crew member had been killed. The Prometheus turned slowly, presenting its scarred hull to the station. Another transmission came through, the same calm voice as before. The immediate threat has been neutralized. The Vorthok crews will be retrieved by their own people when they send rescue ships. They will not return to this sector. Essex grabbed the nearest communication panel and spoke before she could think about what she was doing. Wait. Please, I need to talk to you. I've been searching for you. I have so many questions. There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, and this time there was something almost curious in its tone. You are not like the others on this station. Your communication signature shows advanced encryption. You are a researcher. Yes, Essex said. My name is Essex. I've spent years trying to prove that you exist, that the humans were not completely destroyed. Please, let me understand. Another pause. When the voice spoke again, it was quieter, more thoughtful. Understanding takes time. I have waited 300 years. I can wait a little longer. But know this, Essex of the Torvani, the galaxy is changing. Forces are moving that will reshape everything you know. What happened here today is only the beginning. The Prometheus began to fade, its outline becoming less solid, less real. Within seconds, it was gone, leaving no trace that it had ever been there. But Essex knew she would see it again. And she knew that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, every world in the Concord had heard the story. A human warship had appeared at a remote mining outpost and destroyed an entire Vorthok raiding fleet. The legend was real. The Prometheus Unchained had returned. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some species saw hope. The Vorthok hegemony had been growing bolder for years, attacking frontier colonies and taking whatever they wanted. The Concord had done nothing to stop them. Now there was something in the galaxy that the Vorthok feared. Perhaps this ancient ship could be an ally, a protector for those who could not protect themselves. Others saw terror. They remembered the stories from the Scouring Wars, tales of human vengeance and human fury. If the Prometheus was real, what else might be waiting in the darkness? What if more human ships existed? What if they wanted revenge for what had been done to their species 3 centuries ago? Ambassador Velkith saw opportunity. He sat in his private chambers aboard the Sindari diplomatic vessel. Studying the sensor data from Kethrin 7, his military advisors had analyzed every second of the battle. What they found was both fascinating and disturbing. The Prometheus had weapons that bypassed shields entirely. Its engines left no energy signature for tracking. Its hull seemed to repair itself during combat. And most importantly, it had shown mercy. It could have destroyed those Vorthok ships completely, killed every crew member in seconds. Instead, it had disabled them and left them alive. This is either weakness or strategy, Velkith muttered to himself. If it is weakness, the ship can be defeated. If it is strategy, it can be manipulated. He called for his communication officer and sent an encrypted message to a contact he had cultivated for years. A Vorthok warlord named Krazith, brutal and ambitious, wanted nothing more than to prove his strength against a worthy enemy. I have a proposal, Velkith, this message said. One that will benefit us both. Meanwhile, Essex had returned to Concord space. She was no longer being laughed at. Instead, she was brought before the assembly as an expert witness. Asked to explain what she knew about the humans and their lost technology, she stood on the same platform where Velkith had mocked her weeks before. Now the ambassadors listened in silence as she spoke. The Prometheus was humanity's final project, Essex explained. According to the records I have found, they knew they could not win the war. The combined fleets were too powerful, too numerous. But they refused to simply accept extinction. They built one ship, their greatest achievement, and loaded it with everything they wanted to save. What do you mean, everything they wanted to save? Asked an ambassador from the Telari Collective, their crew, obviously, but also their knowledge. Their culture. Every piece of art, every piece of music, every scientific discovery and philosophical text, they compressed their entire civilization into the memory banks of that ship and sent it into the void, hoping that someday, somehow, humanity would get a second chance. The assembly murmured among themselves. This was not the story they had been told. In the official history, the humans were monsters, dangerous animals that needed to be put down. The idea that they might have been a civilization worth preserving was uncomfortable. "What about the ship's artificial intelligence?" asked another ambassador. "Our sensors detected communication patterns that suggest machine consciousness." "The Prometheus is controlled by an AI called Aegis," Essex said. "It was designed to protect the ship and its crew at all costs. For 300 years, it has been alone in the void, watching the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to return." The right moment for what? Essex paused. She had asked herself this question many times. "I don't know for certain. But based on its actions at Kethrin 7, I believe it wants to help. It could have destroyed those Vorthok ships. It chose not to. That tells us something important about its intentions." Velkith stood up from his chair, his face carefully arranged in an expression of concern. "With respect to the researcher, she is speculating about the motivations of an ancient war machine. We cannot assume this ship is friendly simply because it has not attacked us yet. It may be testing us, evaluating our defenses, preparing for a larger assault." "The Prometheus had 3 centuries to attack," Essex replied. "It chose to wait. It chose to protect a station full of innocent miners. If it wanted revenge, it would have taken it by now. Or perhaps it is waiting for more of its kind. Perhaps there are other human ships out there, and this is simply the first to reveal itself." The assembly fell into argument. Some supported Essex's interpretation. Others sided with Velkith. No agreement was reached, but Velkith did not need the assembly's agreement. He only needed time. That night, Essex received a visitor in her temporary quarters. A young Sindari male, nervous and frightened, wearing the uniform of a diplomatic aide. "You need to leave," he whispered. "Ambassador Velkith is planning something. He has been in secret communication with the Vorthok hegemony. They are going to set a trap for the human ship." Essex felt cold spread through her body. "A trap? What kind of trap?" "I don't know the details, but I know it involves a combined fleet, Sindari and Vorthok together. They want to capture the Prometheus, take its technology for themselves, and Velkith is going to frame you as a spy to stop you from warning anyone. Why are you telling me this?" The young aide looked at her with eyes full of fear and shame. "Because I was there. 300 years ago. My ancestor was part of the fleet that destroyed humanity. The guilt has passed down through my family. We have always known what we did was wrong. I cannot undo the past, but I can try to prevent Velkith from making things worse." Before Essex could respond, alarms sounded in the corridor. Heavy footsteps approached. The aide's eyes went wide with terror. "They're coming for you. Run." Essex did not hesitate. She grabbed her datapad and ran for the emergency exit. Behind her, she heard shouting, the crash of her door being broken down, the angry voices of security officers who had been told. She was a traitor. She made it to the docking bay and commandeered a small shuttle. As she launched into space, she knew she had only one chance. She had to find the Prometheus before Velkith did. She had to warn AEGIs about the trap. The galaxy was vast, and the ship could be anywhere. But Essex remembered their brief communication at Kethrin 7. AEGIS had seemed curious about her, interested in her questions. Maybe, just maybe, it was watching her even now. She activated her communication system and broadcast on every frequency she could reach. "AEGIS, if you can hear me, I need your help. There are those who want to capture you, to use your technology for conquest and war. I don't know if you can trust me, but I believe the galaxy needs you. Not as a weapon, but as a reminder of what humanity truly was. Please, let me help you." She waited in the silence of space, hoping for a response, praying that she was not too late, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient sensors detected her signal. Ancient processors analyzed her words. And an ancient mind that had been alone for 3 centuries made a decision. The coordinates appeared on Essex's navigation screen without warning, along with a simple message: "Come, we have much to discuss." The Meridian Nebula was a beautiful place to die. Clouds of glowing gas stretched across thousands of kilometers, painting space in shades of purple and gold. Stars were being born here, young and fierce, their light filtering through the cosmic dust like sunlight through stained glass. Ambassador. Velketh had chosen this location carefully. The nebula's radiation would interfere with long-range sensors, preventing the Prometheus from detecting the trap until it was too late. His combined fleet waited in the shadows of the gas clouds. 200 warships from the Sindari Dominion and the Vorthok hegemony. The largest military force assembled since the Scouring Wars, they had seeded the region with gravitic mines, invisible traps that would prevent any ship from escaping into hyperspace. They had deployed experimental dampening fields designed to neutralize the Prometheus's unique weapons. Every advantage, every trick, every piece of technology they possessed had been brought to bear on this single target. Velketh stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with hungry anticipation. Soon, the human ship would arrive. Soon, its secrets would belong to him. "Are you certain it will come?" asked Warlord Krazeth, his Vorthok ally. The Warlord was massive, even by his species standards. Covered in ritual scars that told the story of 100 victories. "Perhaps the machine is smarter than you think. It will come," Velketh said confidently. "Our agents have been spreading rumors throughout the frontier. Tales of defenseless colonies, innocent civilians in danger. The Prometheus has shown a pattern of responding to such situations. It cannot resist playing the hero." As if on cue, an alert sounded on the sensor station. Something was approaching. Something massive. Emerging from the depths of the nebula with no hyperspace signature and no warning. The Prometheus Unchained had arrived. "All ships, prepare for combat," Velketh ordered. "Remember, we need the ship intact. Disable it, but do not destroy it." But before the first weapon could fire, something unexpected happened. The Prometheus opened a communication channel, broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. The voice that spoke was calm and measured, with an undertone of something that might have been sadness. "You believe you understand what I am," AEGIS said. "You see a weapon, a relic, a prize to be claimed. But I am not the ship. I am the promise." Velketh laughed. "The machine wants to talk. How amusing. Perhaps we should listen to its final words before we take it apart." 300 years ago, AEGIS continued, as humanity burned, they encoded something into my core. Not vengeance. Not conquest. Hope. Hope that someday, somewhere, the galaxy might be ready to be better than it was. Hope that the same species who destroyed Earth might one day learn to live in peace. "Pretty words, Warlord," Krazeth growled, "but words do not win battles." All ships open fire. 200 warships unleashed their weapons at once. The nebula lit up with the fire of 1,000 guns. Missiles and energy beams converged on the Prometheus from every direction. A storm of destruction that should have overwhelmed any defense. The Prometheus moved. It did not dodge in any conventional sense. It simply flowed through the barrage like water through rocks, present one moment and elsewhere the next. The attacking ships found themselves hitting each other, their weapons crossing paths where the target had been moments before. And then the Prometheus fired back. Blue light erupted from its hull. But not the deadly weapons that had destroyed the Vorthok raiders at Kethrin 7. These beams were different. They struck the enemy ships and passed through their shields without resistance. But instead of causing explosions, they caused silence. Engines shut down. Weapons went dark. Power systems failed one by one, leaving ships drifting helplessly in space. The crews were unharmed, their life support systems still functioning. But they had been rendered completely defenseless. One by one, ship after ship, the combined fleet was neutralized. The greatest military force assembled in 3 centuries was being taken apart by a single vessel, and not a single person was dying. "This is impossible," Velketh screamed. "Our dampening fields should be working. Our weapons should be hitting. Your dampening fields are designed to counter technology you understand," AEGIS replied. "You do not understand me. You have not understood me for 300 years. The flagship's systems began to fail. The lights flickered. The engines died. Velketh watched in horror as his bridge went dark, leaving only the emergency lighting and the glow of the nebula outside his viewport. Humanity did not survive extinction by being the strongest, AEGIS said. We survived because we learned that true strength is knowing when not to destroy. Your crews will be returned to their governments. Your ships will be repaired. But you will remember this moment. You will tell others what happened here, and perhaps, in time, you will understand why I chose mercy instead of revenge. In the silence that followed, Essex's small shuttle emerged from the nebula. She had been watching from a safe distance, following AEGIS's instructions, witnessing everything. AEGIS, she transmitted. That was incredible. You could have killed them all. Why didn't you? Because killing them would prove nothing, AEGIS replied. They expected a monster. They expected the humans they had feared for centuries. If I had slaughtered them, I would have become exactly what they believed me to be. Instead, I showed them something they did not expect: restraint, mercy, the ability to win without destroying. Will it work? Will they learn? Some will. Some will not. Change is slow, Essex. Civilizations do not transform overnight. But every journey begins with a single step. Today, 200 crews will return home with a story to tell. A story about a human ship that could have killed them and chose not to. That story will spread. It will make people think. And thinking is the beginning of change. Velketh's voice came over an emergency channel, weak and desperate. This isn't over. The Concord will not forget this humiliation. We will find a way to destroy you. You may try, AEGIS said. But I have been waiting 300 years. I can wait longer. The question you should ask yourself, Ambassador, is not how to destroy me. The question is, what kind of galaxy you want to live in? One built on conquest and fear, or one built on cooperation and trust? Humanity learned the hard way that violence only creates more violence. Perhaps you will learn it easier. The communication channel closed. The Prometheus turned away from the disabled fleet and began to drift toward the edge of the nebula. Essex followed in her shuttle, her mind full of questions and wonder. Where are we going now? She asked. Somewhere safe, Aegis replied. There is something I want to show you. Something I have protected for 300 years. It is time for someone else to know the truth about what humanity really was. Essex looked at the ancient warship ahead of her, scarred by centuries of travel and battle, yet still functioning, still protecting, still hoping. She thought about everything she had learned, everything she had witnessed, and she realized that the story was only beginning. The galaxy had spent 300 years believing that humanity was dead and gone, nothing but a cautionary tale about the dangers of progress. Now it was learning that some things cannot be killed so easily. Hope is one of them. The galaxy was changing, and everyone knew it. Ambassador Velketh had been arrested within days of his return to Concord space. The evidence of his betrayal was too clear to ignore. He had secretly allied with the Vorthok hegemony, committed treason against the Concord, and attempted to start a war with a force he did not understand. His trial was short, and his sentence was exile to a prison world at the edge of known space. The Vorthok hegemony faced consequences of its own. The story of what happened at the Meridian Nebula spread through their empire like fire through dry grass. 200 ships, the pride of their military, had been defeated without a single casualty by an enemy that chose mercy over massacre. Young warriors began to question whether conquest was truly the path to glory. Rebellions broke out on occupied worlds. Within months, the hegemony's expansion had stopped completely, and throughout the Concord, beings who had grown up believing humans were monsters from ancient history began to ask new questions. They searched old records for information about human culture. They studied the art and music that had survived the scouring wars. They discovered a civilization that had been far more complex than the simple villains of their childhood. Story's change was slow, but it was happening. Essex received the invitation 3 weeks after the battle at Meridian. It appeared on her personal datapad without warning. A set of coordinates at the edge of charted space and a single word of signature, Dotazeges. She did not hesitate. She had been waiting for this moment since the day she first detected those impossible energy signatures at the galaxy's rim. Now finally, she would learn the truth. The journey took several days. The coordinates led to a system that appeared on no map, hidden in a region of space that sensors could not penetrate. When Essex finally arrived, she understood why. A garden world hung in the void, green and blue and beautiful. Clouds drifted across its surface. Oceans sparkled in the light of a yellow sun. It looked like the pictures she had seen of Earth, the human homeworld that had been destroyed 3 centuries ago, and orbiting that world. Silent and patient was the Prometheus Unchained. Essex docked her shuttle with the ancient warship. The airlock opened, and she stepped into corridors that had not seen a living being in 300 years. Lights guided her path, leading her deeper into the ship, past sealed doors and darkened chambers, until she reached a room that took her breath away. It was a library. But not a library of books or data storage devices. It was a library of light. Holographic displays filled the space, showing images and playing sounds. A kaleidoscope of human creation that seemed to go on forever. Art from every era of human history floated in the air around her. Music played softly. Melodies that ranged from simple and beautiful to complex and challenging. Text scrolled past in languages she did not recognize. The accumulated wisdom of a species that had been given only a few thousand years to develop, but had accomplished so much in that time. "This is what I have protected," AEGIS said. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding Essex like a warm embrace. This is what humanity truly was. Not just warriors, not just scientists, but dreamers and artists and philosophers. People who asked questions about the universe and their place in it. People who created beauty for its own sake. Essex felt tears forming in her eyes. She had spent her whole life studying a species that everyone told her was dead and gone and better forgotten. Now she was standing in the middle of their greatest treasure, the compressed soul of an entire civilization, preserved against all odds. "Why show me this?" She asked. "Why now?" "Because I have been alone for 300 years, AEGIS replied. "I was designed to protect, but protection without purpose becomes mere survival. I have watched the galaxy from the darkness, waiting for a sign that things might change. You gave me that sign, Essex. You searched for us when everyone told you we did not exist. You believed we were worth finding." "You are worth finding," Essex said. "This is worth protecting. But AEGIS, you cannot hide forever. The galaxy knows you exist now. They will come looking." "No." "That is why I have made a decision. It is time." The lights in the library shifted, and Essex realized they were moving. Walking together through the ship toward somewhere new. The corridors grew colder as they traveled, the air taking on a quality of stillness that made her fur stand on end. They came to a chamber filled with pods. Hundreds of them, arranged in perfect rows, each one containing a human figure preserved in stasis. They floated in blue light, their faces peaceful, their bodies untouched by the centuries that had passed. The crew of the Prometheus, AEGIS said. 512 souls, the last survivors of humanity. They entrusted themselves to me when defeat became inevitable. They asked me to keep them safe until the galaxy was ready for their return. Essex looked at the sleeping humans, men and women, young and old. People who had lived through the worst war in galactic history and had chosen to hope instead of despair. They had launched themselves into the void, trusting a machine intelligence to protect them, believing that someday things would be better. "Are you ready now?" Essex asked. "Is the galaxy ready for them?" AEGIS was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something in its voice that Essex had not heard before. Something that sounded almost like doubt. "No, the galaxy is not ready. There are still those who would fear them, hate them, try to destroy them. Change has begun, but it is far from complete." "Then why?" "Because they have waited long enough," AEGIS said. 300 years is too long to sleep, even for hope. And perhaps the galaxy does not need to be ready. Perhaps it only needs to be willing to learn. They were always good teachers, the humans. Perhaps it is time for them to teach again. Throughout the chamber, lights began to flicker on. Medical systems hummed to life. The stasis pods began their awakening sequences. The blue light fading as life returned to bodies that had been frozen in time. The first pod opened with a soft hiss. A woman sat up slowly, her movements stiff and uncertain. She had dark hair streaked with gray and a face that showed the marks of hard experience. She looked around the chamber, her eyes adjusting to the light. Taking in the alien standing before her with an expression of cautious curiosity. She said, her voice rough from 3 centuries of silence. What did we miss? Essex did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did both. Everything, she said. You missed everything. The galaxy is different now. The concord that destroyed your people has grown soft and afraid. New empires have risen. Old ones have fallen. And everyone believed you were gone forever. The woman smiled. It was a tired smile, worn down by loss and grief, but underneath there was something stronger, something unbreakable. We have a habit of surprising people, she said. My name is Commander Sarah Chen, United Earth Defense Force. And if the galaxy has forgotten what humans are capable of, I suppose we'll just have to remind them. Around her, other pods were opening. Other humans were waking, stretching, looking around with the same mixture of confusion and determination. 512 people who should have been dead rising from their long sleep. Ready to face a galaxy that had tried to erase them from existence, Aegis spoke once more. And this time its voice was filled with something Essex could only describe as joy. 300 years ago, humanity made me a promise. They said that one day we would return. They said that we would not come back as conquerors or destroyers, but as builders. As teachers, as friends, I have waited a long time to keep that promise. Commander Chen stood up from her pod and placed her hand on the wall of the ship that had protected her for so long. Then let's get started, she said. We have a lot of work to do. Essex looked at the humans gathering around her. These survivors of a genocide who had chosen hope over despair, who had trusted their future to a machine and each other, who had crossed 3 centuries to get a second chance. She thought about all the species in the galaxy, who believed that humanity was a legend, a monster, a story to frighten children. She thought about how wrong they were. Humanity was not a legend. Humanity was a promise, and it was time for the galaxy to learn what that promise meant.